Chapter 9. The Savior in the Dark. They meet again. Run to Portis. The fury that erupted from the cave made Theron's semi-conscious mind stir, seeking to protect itself, at least until he saw what it was. There was a flash of light and a burst of wind that caused all the soldiers surrounding Theron to turn in awe. One of the soldiers was tossed into the air and impaled on a branch. The others began to shout as Theron slowly crawled away, a trail of blood following him. The trees at the entrance of the cave were ripped asunder, and the soldiers that tried to leave were suddenly frozen in place, unmoving. Theron could see the fear frozen in their eyes, unable to run, looking to anyone for hope, for an escape that never came. From within the cave, the young boy, Kit, emerged, hands outstretched. His hair was whipping around his face wildly, and his eyes were glowing a blinding white. There was a rage and terror on his face that shook even Theron to his core. His blurred vision focused on the boy, and his mouth dropped open in fear and amazement at the sheer power. Reya turned the corner from the cave entrance, her mouth agape in fear, with a deep concentration on her face as she approached her brother cautiously. She shielded her face with her hands as she inched closer to him, step by step. There was more power in this boy than Theron had ever seen from even his most skilled soldiers. In moments, there was a clearing where once there was a patch of trees. The remaining soldiers that had once stood around Theron ready to kill him were now broken and shattered, scattered across the ground or in the trees. Then all was quiet again. Theron was laying on the ground panting, his body screaming at him in pain. The snow was melting under him and seeping into the crevices in his armor. Reya hugged her brother, and Theron watched as Kit collapsed in her arms and began to sob. Reya put him down at the cave entrance and rushed to Theron. Theron fought to keep his eyes open, and lost. When Theron's vision returned, he was in the cave again. There was a roaring fire going, and although he wanted to yell at the kids for their stupidity, he welcomed the warmth. "Don't move," he heard Reya call to him. "You're badly injured," she continued, rushing to his side. She patted at his head with a warm rag. He winced in pain. "I've had worse," he said, stirring. The pressure from her hand was enough to keep him laying down, and he stopped arguing. "Kit," he asked quietly. "He's okay, he's sleeping right now." She looked over at her brother, who was curled up by the fire. "I know you said no fires, but it's okay," he said, locking eyes with her now. "You both saved me. You could have left me to die." There was a long pause. "What now?" Reya asked. Theron sighed. "We need to get moving, and we need to go soon. The more time we spend waiting, the more dangerous it gets for us," he said, sitting up at last. His vision blurred as he did so, his head throbbing. "What do you mean?" she probed. He could hear the fear in her voice. "No time to explain. There will be others coming, much worse. Gather your things." "But you're hurt," Reya said softly, trying to get him to sit back down. "I'm fine," Theron said, standing with a grunt. "But you both won't be if we don't go, now." "The snow's only gotten worse," she added. "Good. It will hide us better. We're only 100 miles from the city. We can make it." But Theron wasn't sure Reya believed him. Hell, he wasn't sure he believed himself, but what was he going to do? Wait in this cave for death? "You need to wake your brother. We'll move out in 30 minutes, understood?" Reya didn't speak. She stared at him with a furrowed brow. "Reya," he said, grabbing her by the shoulder firmly. "This is our only chance for making it out alive. Got it?" Finally, she nodded her head. "Good. Wake your brother. I need to sleep." They were on the move within the hour. The snow was falling heavily, and the winds had picked up ferociously. Theron lagged behind with a sword in hand, cursing himself for having slept too much, keeping a watch on the children from afar. Reya had his cloak, and Kit had his ring, leaving Theron to face the bitterness of the setting sun and the wild winds that came with the long nights. He felt the blanket of cold envelop him, but he had no time to think or feel. Chances were he would not make it out alive. Even if he could make it to the walls of Portis with the children, they would kill him on sight for the armor he wore. He pushed the thought out of mind and forced himself to take another step, and another step, and another. Occasionally, Reya would glance back to see if he was there, and he would gesture for her to keep going. Theron watched Kit, remembering the quick moments that came to him from the night before. How could such a small child contain so much power? How had he taken out so many trained warriors like they were nothing but dolls? Theron was astounded, and after having witnessed what he had, he felt now more than ever that he was walking the right path. An arrow suddenly sank into his shoulder, almost exactly in the same spot as the bolt that had struck him only hours ago. He toppled to one knee and howled in pain. The children turned to look at him as a lone figure stood behind them in the distance. The wind and snow obscured them. All he could make out was the dark flowing cloak and the long bow that they were already knocking another arrow onto. Theron didn't have to see their face to know who it was. "Meera," he whispered under his breath. She raised her bow in his direction as he pulled the arrow out of his back. He turned to the kids and spoke into their minds. "Run." The children took off into the darkness. Meera took another step towards him. She loosed an arrow, and with a swift motion he brought up an invisible barrier that warbled with light as the arrow struck it, shattered in multiple directions. "Meera," he called out. "Traitor," she responded. He could hear the pain in her voice. She knocked another arrow. "Meera, please, listen to me." Another arrow went flying towards him. Again, it shattered against his shield. "There's more happening here than we understand. Our leaders have lied to us. They've failed us. If you'd seen what I have seen, you would understand," he begged. "I will never understand the pain you have put me through, Theron. You are not forgiven. You are not of Rain. You are a beast, a foul creature that deserves the death that is coming." She hurled words at him, walking slowly towards him. He put his sword away and held his hands up as he once again broke another arrow against his barrier. They were within 10 feet of each other now. He could see she was crying. "Please, Meera," he said over the howling of the wind. She winced, biting back her sobs. Now that she could see his face, she couldn't bring herself to loose another arrow. She swung her bow with all her might, and it cracked against his armor. In a single motion, he pulled her into a hug. He felt her warmth. He felt the sanctuary of her arms cradle him. She fought him, beating him against his chest, and then she stopped. She sobbed into his shoulder. "How could I ever betray you, Meera?" he whispered. All she could repeat was, "Why?" over and over again. "You have to let me go," he finally said, breaking the silence. "I should kill you," she whispered. Then, without warning, she pulled him into a kiss. He pulled her in harder, melting into her. How cruel, a world for him to finally get what he dreamed of his whole life, only to have to walk away from it. When he pulled away, he looked at her and put his forehead to hers. "Meera," he began, but the words didn't come out. "Me too," she returned. Theron glanced back at the tree line. There, both children's faces were poking out from behind a tree, watching them, waiting to see if their fate was sealed or not. "Meera, they're just kids," he begged. "They're children. They just want to go home." Meera held Theron's hand and walked to his side. She put her hand up slowly and waved to them. Then she sighed, a sad and heavy sigh. "Go," she muttered with the cold voice of a commander he had known his whole life. He didn't say anything else. He held her hand until he was too far to hold it anymore. With one last glance back, he felt the pain of walking away from the one safe space he had ever felt his entire life. She stood there in the snow until he was out of sight. When he was gone, she collapsed in the snow and cried.